Welcome to Sasquatch Talk. My name's Bradley Valentine. You've got Dan Adams and Troy Miller here. This is episode 12. Today we're talking about Nixon and Watergate. Last week we talked about the CIA meddling in media, and I think this is a good transition to this episode. And growing up, I don't know about you guys, growing up I always heard like Nixon was a criminal and he was one of the most corrupt presidents ever. And I think we'll get into it, but it seems like maybe there's something else going on. So for our icebreaker today, I have a question for all three of us. Now keep it brief, 30 seconds or so, and then we'll unpack. At the end, I want to see if anyone has changed his mind. So here's the question. You have to pick one of these four options regarding Nixon and the Watergate scandal. Option 1, Richard Nixon is guilty, and while we're probably missing a couple details, we genuinely understand the situation of the Watergate scandal. Option 2, Nixon is probably guilty, but we're missing some huge pieces here with Watergate scandal. There's some stuff that we don't know. Option 3, I have no idea if Nixon is guilty or innocent, but there's something fishy going on. And option 4, Nixon is innocent and or was framed and something crazy's going on. He was scapegoated. So I'll start with you, Dan. 30 seconds, and I'm going to cut you off at 30 seconds. Briefly, give your answer. We'll go in and explain why. Of those four, what do you think?
All right. So like probably a lot of people, like you had said, growing up, you just, the I am not a crook. Yeah. And then all the Nixon masks and everything, everybody portrays him as a crook. He was a president. He probably knew what was going on.
Yep.
Actually, I'm more of option 3. I didn't really know. Yeah. Right? But after looking at a bunch of stuff, option 3 still stands for me. I think, I don't know if he's guilty or not, but definitely
something fishy.
Some funky stuff going on.
Okay. All right. Troy, what about you?
What was that, 27 seconds?
Yeah. So it definitely seems like there is something fishy along the lines of option 3, like you were with Dan. But honestly, he was a president. He was the leader of the Republican Party at the time. As a leader, you're kind of responsible for these things. Whether he had inside knowledge and knew exactly what it was going on and he controlled it, I don't know. Okay. But you don't get to be the leader of something and then not be guilty if something happens, right? So I'm going with the option 1 there.
Okay, interesting. We'll get into it. I am actually going to go with option 4. I think he was framed or scapegoated. And at this point, we'll talk about some of his guilt. I don't think he was guilty. The only thing I think he was guilty of was after knowledge and not fully disclosing everything. But I don't think he knew what was going on, and I think he was set up. So that's our starting point. Troy, you said number 1. You think he was guilty. Maybe we're missing some things, but he was guilty. Dan, you went, let's break that down. Let's start with you, Danny. Why do you think Troy's wrong here?
So there's lots of times people do things in the government that, because it's made up of individual people, right? If AOC goes crazy and says a bunch of crazy stuff and firebombs a taxi, does that mean that the president is he responsible for her actions? Okay. So the government's made up of a lot of individual people. Could he have been involved? He could have been. But does that mean that he was involved and had knowledge and was like, if this goes sideways, guys, I'm not going to claim to know anything about it. But if it goes off with a hitch, it was my idea.
Okay. Troy?
So on that example, using like AOC firebombing a taxi, well, if it was ordered or if the Democratic Party asked her to do it or ordered the leadership of it, ordered her to do it, right? And so she took it off. then does that respond? Granted, she's the brunt of it. She will take the brunt of the repercussions, but the people who issued the order, would also be at guilt. So in this Watergate scandal, for example, Nixon did say he wanted to get dirt on the Democratic Party. He wanted some information against his political opponent.
Right,
but committee, his committee was the one who actually came up with the Watergate plan and did it, but got caught in the process. So I don't think Nixon was directly involved with minute details. I don't even know if he knew about Watergate and what they were doing during that time. But he did say, I want more dirt. I want more information on his. And so that's why I say he's guilty. Because ultimately, if he didn't say that, I don't know if Watergate scandal would have ever happened.
Okay. Troy, I get what you're saying, but a major point was, you said you don't know if he knew anything about Watergate. That's the crime, the minute detail, right?
Yeah, I know.
Now, if I pressure, like, let's say I'm a CEO of a company, and I say, guys, we really got to get our sales up, and so my accountant starts fudging the numbers. Am I therefore guilty because my accountant started fudging the numbers and making it look like my sales were up? I mean, maybe I'm guilty of not having
Oversight.
Good leadership, but am I guilty of a crime for doing so? So I don't think that's evidence enough. In fact, I think that the evidence points that Nixon had no idea about Watergate until afterwards. So right. If he's guilty of anything, it's guilty of withholding knowledge, right? We had the Nixon tapes in the Oval Office, right? Where he knew about it, right? I forget the guy's name, came to him, he told him about it, he knew about it, and he didn't disclose it to Congress right away. He's definitely guilty of that, but the actual scandal, I don't know. Like,
he didn't have like an active role in it. He wasn't involved, and like you said, he found out about it after the fact. So he's not guilty per se of the actual crime, but the crime never would have happened if it wasn't for his initial request. And I guess that's not exactly a crime in itself, too.
Yeah, that's where I think that's where it gets muddy, right? Because check this out. And like all things, right? You got to follow the money on this one. Who was like one of the largest defense contractors at that time and very involved with the three-letter agencies?
Who?
Do you know, Troy?
There's a whole number of firms.
The biggest one, though. The biggest one.
I mean, at the time, I don't know. In the late
60s, early 70s, Howard Hughes.
Okay. Howard Hughes.
And Howard Hughes. And he was deeply ingrained with the CIA and the FBI on multiple things. Also, some funky stuff going on with Cuba at the time, right?
Right.
Yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
What were 3 of the 5 people that were caught in the break-in?
Cuban nationals.
Yeah.
Yeah, Cuban
I know.
nationals, huh?
Yeah.
Wild.
Okay. Here's a couple points, and I guess this is directed towards both of you. One, the evidence shows that based on polls in Nixon's first term, he was a very good president, or at least well-liked, right? Viewed by the public as a successful president. He was going to win this election. So I know this is circumstantial evidence because we're kind of fighting in reverse, right? We're fighting to prove him innocent instead of guilty. So why would he do this if he was going to win anyways?
Go ahead. Sorry.
I'm just laying out some evidence why I think he was innocent.
Yeah.
Number 2 is you have a very shoddy operation, right? Not only did they go set up wiretaps, but they went back a second time because it wasn't done well enough.
Yeah, okay. Dude, it reeks of setup, right? Yeah. Why do they mention the sequential bills? Every article you look up about Watergate, within the first paragraph, you see the gloves, the wiretaps, and the sequential bills. Those 3 points come up in the first paragraph of every Watergate anything.
Okay, real quick, let me make my other 2 points. One, why was a member, or I guess he was a former member or active member of the CIA? He was involved in this.
Yeah, it was 2 CIA dudes and
3 Cuban nationals. That's just so weird, right? And if a CIA guy is involved, why did they do such a crappy job of this?
Yeah.
You know, like the wiretaps didn't work. They went back a second time.
The amount of operations that dude had a hand in that no one knows about, dude, huge.
Yeah. So those are some main points that I discovered. And I think the biggest is a botched operation led by a CIA operative for an unneeded reason. He was going to win the election, right?
Yeah.
Some polls had him 2-1 over his opponent. Why would he do this? And I don't know what was going on. That's why I think he was at best scapegoated, at worst framed. All right.
Yeah.
I'll go. Yeah. I'll let you guys go from there. Troy?
So you're talking about the lead on the election. Wasn't it that 72 election where he won 49 of the 50 states?
Yeah.
I mean, that is well liked and an easy lead. Why find dirt on your political opponent when they are serious risk to beating you?
Right. Yeah.
Yeah. So I get it. You know, it's like, what was the initial motive?
Yeah. So, I mean, that's a big thing. And like, obviously, if you win, you want to secure your win. And again, we're kind of having, like, if people are listening to this and you've heard your whole life that Nixon is guilty, we're kind of arguing, or at least I am, arguing in reverse to prove his innocence. And that's not, that's not an actual point of evidence that shows he's innocent. It's just circumstantial, right? It doesn't prove his innocence. It just proves that, why would he make this stupid choice? Danny, what are you thinking?
Also, all right. So, first of all, for us to say either he was scapegoated or not, we would have to determine or surmise if he had any ties to Howard Hughes.
Okay.
Right? Most of the reasons that these things get blown wide open or they get nullified for very arbitrary reasons, right? Would mean that either it was so egregious that they can't just, out in the open say, oh, we're actually like you hear deep state all the time, right?
Right.
This reeks of that, right? What you like, oh, we, like if you don't want people to think you're up to anything, show them what you are up to.
Yeah.
What's the least ticketable offense? Like, I don't know, people running drugs get hemmed up for, not using a turn signal or a tail light out or missing a license plate or, like when I read through all these things of these big drug busts that happen, like a lot of times a cop pulled them over because they were either driving 5 under or like the suspension was maxed out because they're trying to move as much as possible at one time, or like it's all these like dumb things. It's not just a normal average. When people are trying to get away with something, their actions seem,
you can tell,
bigger than life, right? Like either they're overly apologetic or like just weirdly out of sorts for what the current thing that's happening is, right? But he gave speeches and he talked about, I was just reading that he wrote 9 of his 10 books after his presidency, so like he was being a president. It's not like he was trying to make money while he was in office like some other presidents that we've had. He was actually trying to be a president,
right?
Also, this is at the beginning of the Cold War, so this is when stuff was brewing that the general public didn't really because after World War II, right, we had this underlying nuclear threat happening all the time, right, through the 60s, and people building nuclear fallout bunkers and all kinds of stuff, right? And there was all these existential threats happening. We don't know what played into that.
Yeah.
Like we don't know the true behind the scenes stuff. Now you can go back and look through like the U2, and you can start to piece some of this stuff together by looking at the projects that were unveiled in the times when they were going on, right? Along with like UFO sightings and all kinds of things. And then the government saying, oh, that there is none. Actually, we've seen UFOs. When you look at projects that were going on and where all of these sightings are is where always these projects are based out of, So like there was lots of trying to look at things from the sky, and then you have Howard Hughes being involved with all the three-letter agencies, and then you have to try to figure out where the ties were that folded the thing up and open the box and release the spring, basically, is what I'm saying.
Gotcha. Troy, you were about to say something.
He brought up aliens or UFOs just a moment ago, and I was going to say, did you guys hear what Obama's been saying about the alien? Like, he's been very vocal about aliens existing. They're just not at Area 51.
Yeah.
But
so, I didn't see that. That's really a thing?
He just had an interview a few days ago.
Yeah. It was one of the first questions he wanted to answer too in his presidency was whether aliens actually exist or not. And he still won't come out and confirm it in that regards. But
he said, yeah, aliens exist. It's just not in Area 51. It's not like a secret place where presidents have access to.
About that deep state in parts of government that are doing things that the president doesn't even know, have access to, and have control over. But as far as like Nixon, even if he guilty or not, it killed his political career. It forced him to resign from presidency. So it had repercussions regardless. And then Gerald Ford took over. He took over as president, and he wasn't even elected.
Right.
Obviously, but
so we're talking about whether UFOs exist or not. It's a place presidents don't have access to. But when we're talking about the Department of Defense, right, which is the Department of War now, the Department of War and all of these projects and things that happen, which, give us an edge on the battlefield. And being in the Air Force for a long time, you don't want to fight from not an edge. That's not a place you want to be fighting from.
Tends to lose more often that way.
Unstable ground and no territory is a horrible place to launch an offensive from. But what I will say is, if you start looking through different things around that time, the Treasury Department quietly decided not to enforce tax regulations on Hughes Holdings for Hughes Holdings. That's his commercial and defense sector things, right? We're talking 1969, tens of millions of dollars.
Yeah, that's a lot.
I mean, if you were, I'm just saying.
I think that there's more to uncover here because, let me build a story, especially in 2025 or 2026. People think of Republicans, maybe not anymore, but in the last 10 years, people thought of Republicans as like the warmongering party, right? And really, that came because of the two Bushes, right? That's it. Before, it wasn't a Republican who started the Vietnam War, It was JFK to Lyndon Johnson. And in fact, it was Richard Nixon who pretty much gave us the end of the Vietnam War.
Right.
And I don't know, maybe there's something into that, but we have Richard Nixon who was a well-liked president. He won his second election quite handedly, like you were saying, Troy. And he was getting us out of World War II. I know we had like peace accords in 73, but they didn't finalize till 75 or 76. I don't remember the exact date. But we have like this vision of certain presidents because of a narrative that we've been told, whether it's through the media, whether it's through our school. And maybe you and I are a little unique, Dan, growing up in the Chicago area. I talked about this last week. Everyone's super liberal and points to Republicans as like evil, racist, mean guys, right? And the Democrats are the nice people. And that's how I grew up, was like the Republicans are the bad guys. Like they're the villains, like the evil villains in the tower at night scheming, right?
Yeah, they're the rich people enslaving humanity to work for them.
And Richard Nixon, like if you look at anything, he like all you can think is like, I am not a crook, right? And
like,
right. That's the only thing.
And it's kind of a character.
But he grew up in a house that his dad built.
What?
Nixon grew up in a house that his dad built.
Yes, and that's the point. Is like the character of this guy is that he's like a bad dude, criminal, a crook, and like we make fun of him by saying I am not a crook and playing that. I bet you ask 100 people and the only one thing they know about Richard Nixon is Watergate. And I bet of those 100 people, 5 people could actually explain what Watergate is, if that, right? We just know he's an evil bad guy who's a criminal. But the more you look into the history, the more you realize, like, let me read something about the Watergate break-in. So we have on May 28th, 1972, a small team of Cuban nationals with connection to the CIA broke into the headquarters of the Democratic National Committee in the Watergate office building. There they planted wiretap bugs on the phones of several DNC officials, including the committee's chairman. That bug did not operate as expected, so they planned another break-in in order to replace the faulty equipment. Okay, I'll just read a little bit more, and then I'll throw it back to you guys. 3 weeks later, on June 17th, a former CIA agent, James McCord, who was serving as CRP's head of security, and the same 4 Cuban nationals with CIA connections again broke into the DNC offices, this time to replace the non-working wiretap. A night watchman at the Watergate complex found evidence of a possible break-in and called the DC police. The burglars were caught red-handed and arrested. Okay. Like, just hearing the description of what happened, is it just me, or does that sound like something was going on?
It was poorly planned, if anything, too. Poorly thought through. But yeah, it's just, you would expect better planning, especially from CIA
expect better
operatives.
Planning, like if the 3 of us decided to do it.
That's what I'm saying, and this is coming from a supposed CIA operative, right? You would have expected a lot better, like the whole cleaning lady, right? They should have known when the cleaning team comes in to clean the room. They usually tape that door, and they should know when they would have left, and so they could have gone it. And this night guard, that's how he figured out a potential break-in, because he knew the cleaning team was gone.
Right.
So why is it still taped up?
How and like, oh, it didn't work, let's go back,
Yeah, right. Make sure your equipment works first in the first place before you go. And yeah, that was
you assemble it on site and hope for the best.
Okay.
Yeah, sure.
So those are the events, and Troy, like you agree with me, something sounds off. Now
it is, yeah.
Dan, go into a little bit more of what you think was actually going on. Like what led up to those events, and be specific with the CIA operative.
Specifically, so the break-in, I feel, was just something that they could loosely say because of affiliations. Here's the example I'll use with the 3 of us, right? We'll say that Brad, you're our new, you're going to be our new finance guy, right? Okay. We hire you in to, do all our finances. Me and Troy know that we've secretly been using, let's say that, I don't want to use that as an example.
Huh. Just use it.
Let's just say a company, there's a company, right? And there's three guys that are in charge of it.
Okay.
And whatever product they have is a sham.
Okay.
Let's use the ShamWow, right?
Okay.
We'll say the ShamWow company. It's the three of us. You're our new finance guy. And what me and Troy didn't tell you is that we buy the ShamWow material from the Dollar General.
Okay.
Right? And all we do is cut it up into a very precise set of things, and then that's how we make our ShamWow.
Yeah.
Right?
Got it.
Maybe it works most of the time, but we don't want to let everybody know that, we're getting our product from the Dollar General. You start going through stuff and you uncover, like, wait a minute, there's some things that aren't lining up here. And let's say you're at the ShamWow product manufacturing plant with us, and you find like a trash bin full of Dollar General wrappers, and you're like, well, this is weird. What are we using from Dollar General? You try to pull on that thread, right?
Mm-hmm.
So then you start to do that, and then you approach both of us, and we're like, how could we make it look like Brad is the one that did this?
Mm-hmm.
How can we make it look? So we hire people to break into your record keeping place, right? We make it look like you're the guy that did it all.
Yeah.
Right. That's when you read through things and you start to put all of these bigger pieces together, right? With tax things and this and that. I mean, most of the reason anybody gets removed from power, the reading back through all of the history stuff, like I started looking back through all of the different impeachments that went on, right? Like even the first impeachment that happened, like 5 years later, they said that he actually shouldn't have been impeached over that,
Mm-hmm. Sure.
Like all of these happened because of some other thing happening that they don't want the American public to understand, that really the only reason leadership rises and falls with anyone is because they're going to either stop or start looking into something that's going on with a three-letter agency.
Okay.
Now, I know that reeks of, they'll say, like, the Republicans drain the swamp is only cover-up for shifting the blame from the three-letter organizations controlling things behind the scenes to just making it look like the Democrats are the bad guys. Yeah. I'm not saying they're not bad guys.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that anytime anyone is throwing shade on anyone else, it's because they're trying to deflect instead of owning up for their part in the puzzle.
Troy,
is what it seems like.
That's that responsibility part, owning that part of the puzzle, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's why I would say Nixon is guilty in that regards, because he was a part of that puzzle.
Whatever part he played, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And whether he knew what the full picture was going on beforehand or not, he still had that part to play, that little piece to fit in there. But when you say guilty, there's like guilty, did he deserve jail time? Or not guilty in the form of a crime, but still had to bear on repercussions, right? So you're still that responsibility component. He may not have been guilty of a crime that deserved jail time, but he paid the repercussions with his political career. It did end.
Sorry, go ahead.
Not even his no, I think we were going to say the same thing. Not even his political career, but his image for the rest of his life.
Exactly.
And history.
Exactly.
Right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's in the history books. Yeah. 100 years from now, people reading U.S. history books will read about the Watergate scandal and Nixon and have this mental image that he was a crook. He was the bad guy. He was the one who orchestrated it all.
And he will go down like if you look up lists of presidents, not all of them, but some of them will have him in some of the worst, like one of the worst presidents of all time, right? And
even though he was a decent president before
no, he
the
was a good
Watergate
president.
scandal,
He was actually
he
a
did a
better
lot of good
president.
things. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. So I read you guys something from Watergate explained by the Nixon Foundation. Now I'm going to read the history Watergate from FBI.gov. Just listen to the difference. In the early mornings of June 17th, a night guard at D.C. Hotel and office complex was making his rounds when he noticed a suspiciously taped open exit door. He quickly alerted authorities, setting off a series of events that would forever change the nation. More than 40 years later, blah, blah, blah. So, I mean, even if you just hear like that description, it's like from a different angle, right? Like this one is from like this hero security guard. And I'm not trying to like dog on the security guard. I don't know who he was, right? But it's like, it's from the angle of like if this was a movie, the first thing I read was from the angle of the burglars. The second one was from an angle of the guys breaking
Law
in.
enforcement.
And it was just like, well, someone broke in. I called the police. Obviously, something was going on. The FBI showed up. We investigated it. The rest is history. But the more details you have about this situation, the more you realize what was actually going on. We don't know. And that's why it's like, I don't know what's going on. Like, Dan, you have your theories with whether it's the CIA or Howard Hughes or whomever, but I don't know what was going on. I think I haven't seen any evidence other than he knew afterwards, talking about it after Congress started investigating it. I haven't seen any evidence to prove him guilty, right? Like in the court of law, you have to be proven guilty first. There was nothing to say that he A, knew about it, or B, tried to set it up. There's no evidence whatsoever. The only evidence is that maybe he tried to cover up. He definitely didn't make the right moves and lied about some things in the future. But that doesn't make him guilty of the initial events. So
that's Andrew Johnson, right? Well, that's the thing. Like, he was angry and yelled a lot, and people didn't really like him.
Right.
But he was going to hold all the southern states to the Reformation Act.
Yeah.
And then a bunch of people voted against him, and then slowly and quietly, Republican after Republican was getting like bribed and freaking threatened and like all kinds of stuff, and like, so eventually, like when you look at the impeachment letter that was handwritten, it was for high crimes and treason.
Right.
That's all that was written down. And then the thing they impeached him on eventually wasn't even an impeachable offense. He was well within his right as a president. They were just upset that it was going to remain, because that forever changed how much leverage the president actually had.
Yeah.
And so, that's when you really start, way back with Andrew Johnson, you start to see this leverage arm happen, because they were afraid that with all the cameras and attention always being on the president, at any time in any speech, he could blow anything wide open.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why I think any president that ever gets impeached or removed is probably 10 seconds from blowing something wide open and being like, you know what? This was my involvement. I can't do this anymore. Here's the actual thing. And then they either get assassinated, or removed.
Isn't it funny? You say Andrew Johnson, Richard Nixon, Bill Clinton,
JFK, but
Donald Trump. So out of the 4 presidents, there's been 5 impeachments. 4 of them have been for Republicans. And with the upcoming Epstein files, we know that, how do I put this? Bill Clinton is a monster. I'll just leave it there.
You must have been doing some reading.
I mean, we pretty much already know he paid Paula Jones to cover up criminal sexual acts. We already know that, right? We know Monica Lewinsky got him impeached. And, Bill Clinton wants to redefine what the definition of is. So anyways, but Troy, Okay, I'm pointing this to you, Troy, because you still think that he's somewhere in the guilty verdict, and we only have like 20 minutes for me to convince you, and if you don't get convinced, that's fine. Donald Trump was impeached twice. Once for election interference and twice for election interference. So he
Both times for the
to
same
which
thing.
point,
Yeah.
with those interference, they proved that
Yeah.
the whole election things that they used to process what the three of us as citizens of this great country use to vote with were corrupt from what the coding in these machines.
The first time it was essentially that he used Russian intelligence to interfere with the election in 2016, right?
Which came from a Clinton.
The second time was that. So the first time was he stole the election. The second time was he said he said the election was stolen. That's our system, whatever. So, I mean, do you think Trump is guilty? He was impeached twice. Troy?
Yeah, no, you a completely different situation
for the same thing, no less.
Yeah. That Russiagate was largely proven to have not been directed by him, or even was a thing much more in the first place. Whereas Watergate, people were caught red-handed.
But not
Nixon.
Not Nixon, though. Not Nixon. He was not. But none of it ever pointed that, nor were any of the admissions in courts or anything. Not one person said he ordered it.
Right. Okay, I get it. But the same thing with the Russiagate. There wasn't an actual crime of sorts to that magnitude of what Watergate was. Right? It was an actual crime. People broke in. People got caught red-handed. Russiagate wasn't anything like that. And that was kind of proven to not be...
People were caught falsifying documents while sitting in political office.
Yeah.
Which is way worse. They were just trying to eavesdrop.
Specifically, hear me out, Troy, and I'll let you get back to your argument because we both been cutting you off. With the crimes that were committed with Russiagate, we even see that Trump's FBI, admittedly who was working against Trump, falsified documents, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But he was the leader of the FBI, was he not? So why isn't Trump guilty? If he was the leader of it, it was his organization. So why isn't it the same thing?
That's I mean,
you're
that's
on the hot seat, Troy.
Yeah, I know. To tell you the truth, I haven't really done much reading into the Russiagate, so I don't know what all the details were. But I do know. So, like, did Trump request this to happen? To have the FBI falsify documents to prove that the Russiagate was a thing, and then ultimately if what you said was correct, the FBI was working against Trump.
Right. Yeah.
Right. And as far as Nixon, again, it's that whole, if you're the leader, you're responsible, right? He was at the top he was the president. He was the top of the political party. His campaign re-election manager was the one who was in charge of this Russiagate thing. Or I'm sorry, the Watergate.
Yeah.
And there was a reason why the campaign manager did what he did. Maybe it was because of something that Nixon said, requesting for that information type of deal. But Nixon wasn't the one who actually did it, the actual crime, but there shouldn't have been repercussions. There's a difference between committing a crime and like serving jail time or doing something wrong and bad and still paying the repercussions. I guess it doesn't make you a criminal, but it does make you guilty of your own decisions, right? And that's where I'm standing. There's something fishy. Nixon may have been innocent. He was probably more likely framed or scapegoated, like you said.
Yeah.
I don't know about mostly innocent only when it comes to the Watergate scandal, but at the same time, you can't expect all of this to happen without a decision or comments being made in the first place.
I guess to your point is like I guess you were assuming that the decisions to break into the Watergate building was because like pressure from Richard Nixon, if I'm getting it
basically,
right.
Yeah.
I guess the point is, what if it was something else? Because
it could have been.
Richard Nixon didn't know that this was happening. Now, that's my argument. Your argument is, who cares if he knew it was happening? He pressured people into doing it.
And it happened under his watch.
What if it was a scandal or some sort of frame job to make him look bad? Like, we're going to take people. I mean, it was led by people in his campaign, but also 4 Cuban nationalists the second time around, a CIA guy. Like that the second time especially was even further away. I don't know, Dan, what are you thinking?
I think that I maintain with 3.
Okay.
I don't know if he's innocent or guilty. Definitely, as
something
the 3-letter agencies go,
yeah,
this thing reeks of just the most, like when I watched the thing with the news commenter guy. He's like, what's his freaking name?
What?
Oh,
what was it?
I don't know. It's like Tom Brokaw. And he's walking through the supposed place where Deep Throat handed all the tapes over and all that. And he's like, in this parking garage.
Yeah.
Right? Like the amount of theatrics played into this third-rate burglary attempt. Like, dude, I know you've watched the Burn Notice, right?
Yeah.
Like the amount of times that spies take to make things look more obvious than not, right? Like, why wouldn't you? That just looks, it's like you're playing Clue, but everybody has extra pieces and identical yellow envelopes to put their own clues in to frame each other. I feel like that's a good game, like who framed who. You have to figure out motives, and like you each have cards with back ties.
Yeah.
Like you could make an entire board game out of like Watergate scandal-esque type deals with like
that would be
who's
fun.
getting money from who behind it. It would be like Risk, but you know, that's what I see. Is there's so much more that we can't see, and there's so much behind the scenes that the average American doesn't see, which ties this into the media, right? That Tom Brokaw thing, like they broke the exclusive interview to them. They're the only ones that are going to have the story. I better watch this, 12-hour uninterrupted segment so that I know what's going on.
It reminds me of, if you guys remember AOC in during the January 6th thing. AOC was like, I was scared for my life. I thought I'd be sexually assaulted. And I thought, and it turns out she wasn't even in the Capitol at that time, or in the Capitol building, and really no one questioned it.
Well, people did. They just didn't get, 30 hours of media footage to do it.
Now we know she's a dirty liar, but it still doesn't matter. Jussie Smollett. You guys remember him?
Actor.
Yeah. He's the guy in Chicago who said that in downtown Chicago, in the middle of the night, he was going out to get a Subway sandwich, and 2 redneck hillbilly MAGA wearing sons of guns took him and beat the crap out of him and said, "This is MAGA country," and called him the F word because he's gay, and they didn't like the show he was on. And it's like, hang on, this happened in downtown Chicago. Redneck hillbillies knew the show he was on, knew he was
to see
gay.
A MAGA hat in downtown Chicago, I'm taking a picture.
This is what, and everyone's like, oh, poor guy, and it turns out he was lying and went to jail for lying in a fake investigation. Weird. So I think it's only fair. Danny, you talk about like we should be subjective. We're not objective. We're not an objective podcast, but I don't want to skew people without some other evidence. So I'm going to read a couple other things here. And just, this is probably more damning information for Nixon. So this is the worst part. Okay, I'm just going to read some stuff about the presidential tapes, etc., etc. In an attempt to ensure accurate records of presidential meetings and to trace sources of public leaks emanating from the White Office, in February 1971, Nixon started having recording equipment installed in the Oval Office. Okay, let's go on to the Watergate tapes.
Can I make a comment about that real quick?
Yeah.
He wasn't the only president to install recording equipment in the Oval Office. So that's not a new phenomenon.
He actually took out what Lyndon B. Johnson had and then put it back in. So that is a good context here. And I didn't try to read it to skew anything. I didn't read it all because of time. So this continues on a couple paragraphs later. Only about 5% of the nearly 3,600 hours of Nixon tapes recordings contain references to Watergate. 2 tapes proved to be particularly damning. The 18.5-minute gap in June 20th, 1972 was the first recorded conversation between Nixon and Hadelman following the Watergate arrests. So this is after Watergate, after people are arrested. At this point, obviously Nixon knows about it, right? Like it's a public thing. A portion of the tape was completely obscured by a distinct buzzing sound, which rendered the conversation inaudible. This has been known as the 18.5-minute gap. Okay, the next is the, quote, smoking gun tape. The next recorded Watergate-related conversation was June 23rd, when the president and his chief of staff spoke about Watergate. During the conversation, the president agreed to Dean's recommendation to get the CIA to tell the FBI not to proceed with 2 interviews of people thought to be connected to the financing of the break-in. On July 6th, FBI Director Patrick Gray spoke to Nixon by the phone to express concern that some of his staff were attempting to impede the Bureau's investigation. So it was just a couple years later that he, was convicted and impeached and resigned. So there's the 18.5-minute gap in the smoking gun where he admittedly knew about it, which of course he knew about it at this time. The arrests already happened. So that's where I'm like, okay, at the very best, he at least knew that some investigations were going on, and his chief of staff tried to skew him to say like, hey, maybe you shouldn't have some people interview because it's particularly damning for you, etc., etc. So I just wanted to get that out there because I felt like it was fair to not just sit here and say like he knew nothing, blah blah blah. He knew something at least afterwards. So that was my point. Troy,
didn't he when they subpoenaed the videos, he denied it the first time? The recordings.
I think you're right. I think and he even admitted later that he did lie about it.
Yeah. And he could have had the opportunity to destroy those recordings.
They were before they were subpoenaed personal property.
Yeah. And he didn't do that, which is on kind of Dan's point, fishy. Like why didn't he destroy him in the first place?
Yeah.
But then there's nothing to destroy if it was nothing there.
Here's what I think what happened. He made mistakes. Yep. And he didn't destroy them and gave them to Congress because he thought it would vindicate him. He thought, oh, this actually helps me. Not knowing that they would go to the 18.5-minute gap in the meeting with his director or chief of staff. He didn't think that evidence was bad enough to actually damn him on anything. He thought this was just like a private, like, we got to deal with the political fallout of it. And that goes back to like a point of innocence. Why wouldn't he delete it?
Yeah.
Right? Yeah. Dan, what do you think?
Or just say that because he could have claimed that those tapes were all national security and just had them all flash fried.
Well, they were legally his personal property. So he did not have to give those to him. It was he did not legally have to do it. He could have destroyed it, and while it would have felt fishy, it would have been legally fine.
Yep.
So I don't know. All right, we only have a few minutes, so let's each take our final, like if we're on a legal case, make your final argument and go through 1, 2, 3, or 4. Have you changed your mind? Do you still believe in the same thing? Take about 90 seconds each. I'll start with you, Troy.
Do you think he deserved jail time? I don't think he would have deserved jail time.
Okay.
But I think because of his role, it deserved repercussions, some sort of fallout for it. Those who committed the actual crime deserve the jail time. And I guess that's that whole guilty component, whether he's guilty or not. Who does the jail time? Who did the actual committing of the crime? I don't know. That's my point. Yeah. So I guess you could say a mixture of that 1 and 2 option that you said Nixon's probably guilty.
Yeah.
There's still a lot of major details missing because Operation Deep Throat didn't reveal his true identity until 2005.
Yeah.
Right. So there's that fishing missing detail component part of it, but you're yeah. Go ahead, Dan. Your turn.
All right. I'm just kidding. Here's what I am going to say. What if this? What if, like me and Brad were saying, he's a kid from meager means, right? His dad built his home, somehow worked his way through, made it into office of presidency, right? And he knew some people that thought, hey, he's not a rich kid, right? He maybe, when faced with large sums of money that he didn't yet think he could have, maybe we could sway him to do our bidding, right? And now this is all just my brain trying to read through all the cracks of the for and against Nixon, right? Mm-hmm. So maybe they said, hey, I bet we can sway him. And it turns out he was like, maybe. And then he was like, you know what? No, that's wrong. I'm going to expose all this, and I'm going to let everyone know that the only thing that drives American politics the most, or sways it the most, is the defense organization.
Okay.
And all of the billions of tax dollars and other oil money that gets funneled through there. And he's talking to somebody from the IRS, and he's like, hey, all we got to do is audit Hughes Industry. That's all we got to do. Okay. Right? And then that not only because you'd have to look at the national debt at that time and see what recourse that would have going forward if they were to introduce something saying that tax dollars couldn't be spent on defense budgets and that had to come from somewhere else, right?
All right.
And that they couldn't be hidden or indiscretions, right?
What's your final verdict?
So my final verdict is still with the number 3. I don't know if he's guilty or innocent, but where I was going with that is I still think that maybe somebody came up with a plan that didn't actually work out, so then he had to go. And they're like, tell you what, we'll expose you for this thing, for this other thing, right? And he's like, well, I'm out then. I don't want to play your game no more.
Sure.
I'm done. Because he gave all those tapes because he thought that was going to make him innocent, right?
Yeah.
So just by looking at his actions and then all this crowd of people around him that are trying to sway him to do one thing or the other, right? And then he's like, you know what? I resign. I can't do this. This is bad. This is bad for the people, bad for me. I'm out.
Okay. All right. So, Troy, we slightly shifted you from 1 to 2-ish. Danny, you're still at 3. I'm still at 4. I think that A, he was going to win the election. Why would he do this? B, this was such a failed op. Why was it failed op? This just leads me to believe it was meant to fail in the beginning. There were Cuban nationalists, there were CIA. I see no evidence of him ever knowing about it. And I think his actions are somewhat redeeming. While ignorant and maybe even wrong, I think that they show proof his future actions of giving the tapes, not destroying them, having these discussions prove his innocence, not his guilty, not him being guilt. a guilty. But okay, I also think, to go back to one point that you're saying, Dan, like with national debt, he's the one who finally put the nail in the coffin with the gold standard. And while that sucks, it puts us in a fiat currency. There's not enough gold in the world, at least mined, to cover our current national debt. So we had to have that. If he didn't get rid of the gold standard, then other countries would own us and they could call our debt and we'd have to pay them immediately. And I don't know what happened. I don't know why it happened, but he was taken down, and I think worse than jail time, Troy, his name, his legacy will be
being
for like till the day the world ends. People will see Richard Nixon as a criminal, as a crook. And I think that's worse than jail time. That's worse than anything. He had a good presidency.
Yeah, because with jail time, you could at least pay it back. Yeah. I went to jail.
Yeah. We don't know about his childhood. We don't know about, he was a good guy. Like, he didn't like war. He loved foreign nationals, right? Like, he had so much empathy for people. All we know is he's a crook. Anyways.
Yeah.
So I say, guilty or not, his whatever his sentence was, he got the worst possible sentence. We are officially out of time. That's all we have. We are Sasquatch Gun Oil. Thank you so much for joining us today. Have a great day.